Your face is the first thing people see when they meet you. So why use anything but Noxzema? It's better than soap. Better for your face. It dissolves oil without over-drying. Soap doesn't. Noxzema. Every time you wash, every day. You will have your face all your life. Take care of it. For healthy-looking skin.
Your face belongs to Noxzema.
A war is like when it rains in New York and everybody crowds into doorways, you know, and they all get chummy together. Perfect strangers. The only difference, of course, is in a war, it's also raining on the other side of the street, and the people who are chummy over there are trying to kill the people who are over here who are chums.
These guys aren't soldiers, they're doctors.
I'm a temporarily misassigned civilian.
They give back life. Can you do better?
I mean, I really wish somebody would tell these people back home this.
I just pray that somehow they will all seem to make sense.
It's crazy.
When severe weather hits, Channel 5 will warn you first with a Guardian Lightning Tracker. It's the latest forecasting technology from Channel 5's team of professional meteorologists. The Guardian, only on Channel 5. You're watching Channel 5.
One setting, the Detroit Economic Club. One problem, the U.S. economy. Two different messages.
At the core of my plan, there are 4 principles.
You'll find 13 proposals that I intend to achieve in the first year of my second term.
Dueling solutions to the nation's #1 problem. But does either one hit the target?
This is ABC News Nightline. Reporting from Washington, Ted Koppel.
Don't start reaching for that clicker. This is not the night for Jay or Arsenio. This is the subject that repeatedly heads the polls when Americans are asked what they care about most this election year. This is what so many of you insist that we in the media should be focusing on when we get distracted by such trivialities as the various Jennifers who may or may not have played a role in our presidential candidates' lives. This is the meat and, no matter how you spell it, the potatoes of our national existence. This is jobs, homes, food, education, recreation, everything, in short, that we are expected to enjoy when the economy is healthy. Everything that so many among us these days are not enjoying. Today, President Bush spelled out his plan for the economy before the Detroit Economic Club. Governor Clinton has already addressed the same group on the same subject a few weeks back. So we asked Nightline correspondent Jeff Greenfield to do a little comparative analysis for us. Here is what our candidates are offering.
Can you look at a candidate's economic plan without a political framework? Sure. You can also try driving cross-country without a roadmap. Of course, there are genuine, substantial differences on economic policy between George Bush and Bill Clinton. But the political imperatives that drive what they say and what they don't say are striking.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
The president came to Detroit today knowing that most Americans still believe he has no clear domestic economic program. So he cast his proposals in grand terms.
I want to stimulate entrepreneurial capitalism, not punish it. I want to empower people to make their own choices, not yoke them to new bureaucracies. I want a government that spends less, regulates less, and taxes less. And I will fight without hesitation for a free flow of trade and capital and ideas around the world.
Bill Clinton's speech last month offered this version of the vision thing.
I offer a vision of millions of jobs and thousands of new companies and dozens of new industries. A vision of economic growth that starts by investing in our people, their health, their education, and their skills. And a vision of presidential leadership that challenges every student and every worker and every business person to do their best so that we can compete and win again in the world marketplace of the 21st century. Good luck. Thanks.
Good work. We can show we can build ships, huh?
Thank you.
With most Americans convinced that the economy is in bad shape, Bill Clinton's economic prescription begins by driving that point home, hard.
Here at home, people who have jobs are working harder for lower pay. The United States Census report documents that 2/3 of the American working people are making lower wages today for longer work weeks than they had 10 years ago.
For the president, the task was to acknowledge hard times, but to accentuate the positive.
Now, I don't mean to suggest that all is well, that we don't need to lead and manage the changes that are transforming our economy. But you can't chart the stars if you think the sky is falling down.
For a conservative, any hint of the government directing economic activity is a bad idea, especially given the widespread belief that the government could not organize a two-car funeral.
Our nation has never been seduced by the mirage that my opponent offers of a government that accumulates capital by taxing it and borrowing it from the people and then redistributing it according to some industrial policy. We know that the clumsy hand of government is no match for the uplifting hand of the marketplace.
For Clinton, that approach explains our failure to compete.
I don't believe in government picking winners and losers, but our government should do what it takes to help American businesses and workers become winners in the world economic competition.
Both candidates used their economic forums to plug broader concerns. On education, for example, Clinton stressed one of his favorite ideas.
Under my plan, we would scrap the existing student loan program and substitute for it a national service trust fund out of which any American could borrow the money to go to college, but they would have to pay it back, either as a small percentage of their income at tax time so they couldn't beat the bill, as so many do today, or even better, by giving 2 years of service to our nation here at home, rebuilding America.
The president pushed his theme of school choice.
The catalyst for change, the one reform that drives all others, is school choice. Giving children scholarships so that all parents have the freedom to choose which schools will best serve their children. Competition is the principle that must underlie education reform, to break the establishment's monopoly on the system. And competition will not work unless parents are allowed to choose their children's schools, whether it's the public school across town or the parochial school across the street.
On free trade, the president managed to link that issue to the end of the Cold War and the death of imperial communism, a not-so-subtle reminder of his foreign policy record.
And so I want to announce today that it is my goal to develop a strategic network of free trade agreements with Latin America, with Poland, Hungary, and Czechoslovakia, and with countries across the Pacific.
Clinton's proposals walk a fine line between free trade and the fears of some workers that their jobs would be in jeopardy.
I am not a protectionist, but I don't want to be a pushover. We have to be fair to our workers, to our environment, and to our future. We can do both if we are committed to growth through expanded trade and fair trade, and if we realize that no nation on earth has free trade.
As a Democrat determined not to be seen as a big government liberal, Bill Clinton has offered this symbol of his fiscal restraint.
Some time ago, I called for a 25% cut in aggregate congressional and White House staffs.
Today, the president saw him and raised him.
And I'll start by cutting the White House budget 33% if the Congress cuts its own budget by the same amount.
Tonight, the Bush campaign bought 5 minutes of network time to highlight the president's economic proposals.
My agenda for American renewal shows where we should go and how we can get there. I hope you'll take the time to read it.
The Clinton campaign, for its part, is spending more than $1 million to run this television ad stressing Clinton's welfare plans.
It's time to make welfare what it should be, a second chance, not a way of life.
And then there's the topic that gets almost no direct comment at all, the federal deficit and what specifically to do about it. It brings to mind something a voice from the not-too-distant past liked to say.
We're going to have to settle down here, folks. We're going to have to cut out a lot of this wasteful spending. We're going to have to balance the budget. or we have to pay our bills.
I'm Jeff Greenfield for Nightline.
When we come back, we'll be joined by two men who are trying to encourage talk about the deficit in the most urgent way. Senator Sam Nunn of Georgia and Senator John Danforth of Missouri.
This is ABC News Nightline, brought to you by True Value.
You can do it.
Top quality paint at rock bottom prices. That's the True Test home decorating sale at True Value. Get Easy Care latex flat finish for just $9.88 a gallon. Then save $4 on the most popular stencil from Stencil-Ease, their ivy pattern for just $2.95. And that's just the start of the savings during the True Test home decorating sale.
You can do it with True Value.
If you've discovered that all you really need in life is just a little more. Discover the performance and handling of the all-new 1993 Toyota Corolla and discover Corolla again.
I'm not sure if you know this. There are over 600,000 words in the English language. Most of us use 2,000 of them. What happened to the rest? They're on paint cans, confusing the heck out of everybody. That's why I'm introducing Ed Wiggins Private Stock. It's just as good a quality of paint as you can get, with the easiest instructions you've ever seen, to make painting a whole lot easier and to prevent you from coming up with a few choice words of your own.
Outside flat paint on sale at Menards, only $9.79.
2020 blows the MIA scandal wide open. American prisoners from 3 wars shipped to the Soviet Union, and our government knew. 2020 Friday.
A little more than 3 months ago, a bipartisan panel of 6 senators appeared on this broadcast to push a campaign issue, the federal budget deficit, to the fore. That night, they challenged both presidential candidates to answer the tough questions. While the White House has not responded to the challenge, Governor Clinton did agree to take part in such a forum. 2 members of the distinguished group with us that night were Senator John Danforth, a member of the Finance Committee and a Republican, and Senator Sam Nunn, chairman of the Armed Services Committee and a Democrat. Both gentlemen are in our Washington studios tonight. Senator Nunn, let me begin with the symbolic, and then we'll move to the substantive. On the issue of whether it's a 25% cut or a 33% cut in White House budget and congressional budget, does that amount to a hill of beans? Does it mean anything beyond the symbolic?
It's symbolic, and if it was joined with an overall deficit reduction plan where we were really calling on every element of our society except the low-income people to share in the sacrifice, I think that symbol could become meaningful. If it's isolated, as it was in the president's speech, I think it's pure symbolism, and although we do need to do some cutting, I don't think it really has much impact on the deficit.
What about the issue, before we get to the larger issue of the deficit, what about the issue of cutting federal salaries? I think the president suggested today that he would cut every salary over $75,000 by 5%. Would that make a difference?
Not in the deficit. It, again, might be symbolic. It might make people feel better. This is a reversal of the president's beginning point in his term, where he tried to strengthen federal employment and upgrade the civil service. For instance, in the Defense Department, one of the reasons we have such difficulty in managing $290 billion is because we have so much turnover. People go out for more lucrative jobs, in particular civilians. We can't keep them very long. So unless this was coupled with asking, for instance, the chief executive officers of the large companies of America to also join in, and other people in high income brackets, I think it could prove to be counterproductive in terms of getting the kind of people we need to manage, particularly if we're serious about managing in a way that gets down government waste.
Senator Danforth, you approached me a number of months ago because you felt the deficit was of such urgency that you hoped that we could gain some publicity for the issue of a bipartisan group of U.S. senators saying to the presidential candidates, the president and Governor Clinton, come debate this issue, come talk about it, come respond, and tell us what you're going to do on the deficit. Now, today, the president made his long-awaited speech on the budget, and you found in there what I believe you consider to be a pretty substantive approach to cutting the deficit. I must confess, I missed it the first time around, so explain it to us, would you?
Yes, the point that we made on the program 3 months ago was that the deficit is the toughest issue, that candidates naturally don't like to talk about it because it tends to be very, very unpopular, particularly either raising taxes or capping the growth of the entitlement programs. The entitlement programs are the fastest growing part of the federal budget. They're also by far the most popular part of the federal budget, and therefore the hardest part to deal with politically.
You're talking about things like welfare, Medicare, Medicaid?
That's right. Absent Social Security, which is funded by its own trust fund and has been treated separately both by people who have wrestled with this in Congress and by the president today. At the Republican convention in his acceptance speech, the president took a very strong position. He said that he was in favor of a cap on the growth of entitlement programs other than Social Security, capping them to the increase in population in those programs plus the consumer price index. That is a major, major proposal by the President of the United States. Very controversial. It was immediately pounced on by Governor Clinton, who saw it as a major political statement by the president. So I think the president has on the table something that is very tough, that is an entitlement cap. At the same time, Governor Clinton has proposed tax increases. He has not designated those tax increases for the budget deficit. In fact, he has offered to spend more than he brings in new taxes. But the fact of the matter is, and I give him credit for this, he has at least taken an unpopular position with respect to taxes. So we now have the issue out there for the American people. The question is, how do you want to deal with the budget deficit if you want to deal with it?
Well,
are you willing to increase taxes, or are you willing to control the growth rate of entitlements? There are very different positions between the two presidential candidates, and the issue is joined.
Senator Nunn, and I know that you joined Senator Danforth on this, and one of the reasons I asked you both here tonight is while each of you is a tough partisan, nevertheless, on this issue, you seem to have reached a sort of informal agreement to keep partisanship out of it as much as possible. Is it going to be either capping entitlements or raising taxes, or didn't I understand you the last time you were here to say if we're really going to make a true dent in the deficit, we're going to have to do both?
You understood it correctly, Ted. It's not either or, and the arithmetic won't add up with an either or. To get the deficit down over 5 years requires either spending cuts or tax increases or extra economic growth, or a combination of all three to the tune of about $600 billion. Frankly, neither candidate has even come remotely close to that. And until the president made his entitlement proposal today, and I agree with Senator Danforth, I think that is significant, he was basically calling every day on the campaign trail for more spending and less taxes. And I felt we might have to call the election in October to keep from doubling the deficit before November. So he was getting worse every day until this proposal, and I think this proposal is a step in the right direction.
Gentlemen,
I would have to add, though, one other thing. Senator Domenici and I and Jack Danforth supported this in May of this year, had an entitlement cap that was spread out over a longer period of time and was, I think, a little more moderate and more achievable, and the president's support would have been very helpful then. That was not long ago in May. We only got 27 votes, but if he had been for it and gone to the American people for it, we would perhaps have even had a chance of passing it.
A quick break, and then I'd like each of you to explain with as much specificity as possible what it is about the two plans, the Clinton plan and the Bush plan, that will cut the deficit, and by how much, and how much more you think is necessary. We'll be back with more of our discussion in a moment.
It's your bed, your Serta-Perfect sleeper, but it's the most comfortable spot in the house. The Serta surface and support only Serta builds in makes it that way. So if it gets a little late for breakfast, there's always brunch. Is it any wonder people are saying, I want my Serta?
Your Chrysler, Plymouth, and Dodge dealers announce the wide-open Spacious Sale. A sale on America's lowest price 6-passenger cars. Spacious Acclaim from Chrysler, Plymouth. Spacious Spirit from Dodge. Both offer automatic. Plus now at no charge, air, tilt, tinted glass, cruise, and more. Yes, all at no charge. Now also with $1,000 cash back, up to $2,600 total savings for their lowest prices ever. Under $11,200. Now at your Chrysler, Plymouth, and Dodge dealers.
Gifted Hands, the gallery on the park, downtown Ames.
Who's this little boy? Who is this old man? They're both the same person, but that's only half the people you'll meet when we take you backstage with Billy Crystal, 2020, Friday.
And we're back once again with Senator Sam Nunn and John Danforth. Senator Danforth, let's start putting some specifics to these numbers. First of all, what is the deficit?
The deficit's, what, $300 billion, I guess? $400 billion?
Close to 400.
400.
$400 billion. When the president talks about capping entitlement programs, he's speaking of doing so over a 5-year period. During that 5-year period, how much do you anticipate, how much does he anticipate would be saved by that capping process?
$300 billion would be saved by capping the entitlement programs. And again, this does not count Social Security, does not touch Social Security, but $300 billion on the entitlements themselves. The president also proposes a $132 billion cut in specific cuts in the budget. So that would be up to $432, and he's also suggesting a tax cut of about $100 billion. This is spread over a 5-year period of time. So you've got a net of 330, say, billion dollars.
All right, now that's
savings.
That's the 1% tax cut that the 1% across the board tax cut that he was talking about.
Yes, and for small businesses, and but these were, as he said, just possible suggestions today. He was not spelling out the tax proposals. What's important to focus on is what the president's talking about is, as he says, downsizing government. That means not just the size of the staff in the White House. What that means is the role and the scope and the cost and the weight of the federal government. He wants to control the growth of entitlements. He wants to reduce the tax burden. By contrast, Governor Clinton is proposing tax increases. He is not proposing to reduce the budget deficit. He is instead proposing to increase spending programs. So his proposed increase in spending exceeds what he would bring in by increased taxes. Now, Senator, this is a fundamental difference in policy.
Senator Nunn, as we look at those figures, it appears that over a 5-year period then, the president's program, even with his 1% tax cut, would erase the deficit, right?
No, because it would take $600 billion, approximately twice this much, to erase the deficit. It would not be done with $300 billion, and even that number includes the continuation of what I think is a horrible fiscal practice, and that is using the Social Security surplus, in effect, to run the general fund. That's being borrowed each year, and we now owe $327 billion as of this date to the Social Security Trust Fund that's been borrowed, in effect, to pay for the operating fund. But I don't agree with Jack's arithmetic, either on Governor Clinton's proposals or on President Bush's proposals, although I certainly acknowledge that the President gained a little credibility today in his deficit proposal on entitlements. First of all, the President's proposed a lot more tax cuts than simply that 1%. I won't enumerate them, but they've been pointed out over a period of time. And second, he's proposed a lot more spending increases than The ones that have just been enumerated today, he's proposed a number of them, including a job training program recently that had no funding, and including a health care reform plan that really has no funding. So the arithmetic simply does not add up, although some progress was made today, and I think the entitlement proposal should be taken seriously. The problem with the entitlement proposal, and I'm for that kind of proposal, Senator Domenici and I and Senator Danforth and others voted for it, the problem is it implies very large restraint in health care costs. That doesn't mean health care would go down. It means that you would take the curve that was going up at that rate and have it go up at a lesser rate. But the problem with that is it takes a couple of years at best to put into effect that kind of health care reform, which means that you're really going to have to do this over a 7 to 10 year period. I do not think it's possible to do it over 5 years, but the concept, I think, makes sense.
Gentlemen, we are down to about our last 30 or 40 seconds. Senator Danforth, if you would go first, please. Are you encouraged to believe that even in this political season, both men now are genuinely trying to grapple with the deficit issue?
Ted, you have the stuff of a major debate. The issue really is clearly drawn now, and I think if the media would maybe do a better job of concentrating on the issue of the deficit and maybe less attention to, say, bus trips, I really do believe that the American people can be presented with a clear difference between the two presidential candidates on the deficit.
Senator Nunn, 10 seconds. You agree?
It's getting better, and I hope that they will continue to debate it with the help of people like you and with Jack Danforth stimulating it, with Warren Rudman and Paul Zongas coming out next week with an educational effort on the deficit, and with what I hope will be a Nunn-Domenici CSIS release on a comprehensive proposal within the next couple of weeks. All of that together, I hope we can stimulate this kind of debate by the candidates and by other people running for federal office.
We'll try and keep all those balls in the air. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming in tonight. Good of you both. I'll be back in a moment.
Quality, so look for this name.
I know you're getting the very best.
Right, Dad.
Ace 7-Star Satin Latex Wall and Trim Paint is just $10.97 a gallon, and Ace Silicone Sealant is only $1.99 a tube.
Ace Label product.
Another reason why Ace is the place.
For you.
It may surprise you to learn who, over 30 years ago, was the first car maker to build cars with seat belts, to make safety glass standard, the first U.S. car maker to offer anti-lock brakes, and who today offers more models with dual airbags than any other manufacturer. That company is Ford Motor Company.
We're committed to making safety innovation an important part of quality.
Ford Motor Company. Quality is job one. It's working.
It's like a poltergeist. It's incredible.
It was the noise of that wind.
It was like a bomb went off.
I just don't know where we're going to begin. When people buy insurance, it's not a tangible item. They can't turn around and take it and put it on a table and admire it.
Feels good to have a friend and have a company like Allstate behind you.
I don't have a roof, and I'm smiling.
We're going to get the place fixed up. We're going to have a home again.
Now you're going to see exactly how good your insurance company is.
My glasses drive me crazy. They're always slipping at the wrong time. They never stay where I put them.
You don't have to put up with glasses that don't fit anymore, because at LensCrafters we have so many ways to fit your snug points, with features like snug fit hinges that flex to keep their lasting fit. And your glasses will be ready in about an hour. How's that?
Real secure.
And they'll stay that way.
Finally, comfortable glasses that keep their fit.
LensCrafters, better fit for greater comfort in about an hour.
You're kidding me.
These people just found out they're the newest winners in the Publishers Clearinghouse Sweepstakes.
My heart is beating a mile a minute.
You could be our new $10 million winner if you enter our new sweepstakes fast.
He laughs at me. I send him in. He's not laughing now.
Hurricane-proof home building. Can scientists help prevent the tragedy of another Andrew? Also, student credit cards, an advantage or a nightmare? Here on the next Good Morning America.
That's our report for tonight. I'm Ted Koppel in Washington. For all of us here at ABC News, good night.